In today's video, I'll be sharing 3 top tips to support you prepare for an Oxbridge interview. My name is Éireann and this is The Student Journey, a channel dedicated to supporting you on your student or application journey, as well as sharing elements of my own. Today's video is actually a re-upload of a video that I made and shared previously on another YouTube channel. The reason I'm doing this is because despite my intention of waking up and recording a whole load of videos today, there are some building works going on outside. And even finding the time to record this short 1-minute introduction has been an absolute nightmare. Although the video is a bit old, the advice still stands today and is really useful for those of you preparing for an Oxbridge interview or an interview for any other kind of academic undergraduate course, so do bear that in mind. Do take notes and do let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to answer. So thanks for watching and best of luck. So this video is going to be about Oxbridge interviews. So if you apply to Oxford or Cambridge and they, having looked at your application, so that's your grades today, your predicted grades, any work you sent, your personal statement, any admissions tests that you've done, if they see all of that and they're basically quite interested, they will invite you up for an interview. The interviews essentially serve to get to know you better, ensure that you're actually the person who wrote the application, test your way of thinking, so that's how you approach a problem, how you try and deal with new information, and basically test your intellectual flexibility, so that's considering ideas from a range of perspectives. And if that all goes really well and they have the space, they will accept you. How interviews work is most people have 2 interviews. In Oxford you are quite likely to be interviewed by other colleges, and that's just the uni's way of standardising their admission system and checking that everyone kind of gives the same score to the same quality of applicant, if that makes sense. So do expect to have at least more than 1 interview and to potentially be interviewed by other colleges. So today I'm essentially going to give you 3 very practical tips that you can take up in order to prepare for an interview that you might have. I forgot to mention, if you have been invited to interview, well done, that's amazing, and you know, something that not many people get. And if you are watching this because you're considering applying but maybe haven't made an application yet, you're a bit unsure, hopefully this will give you an idea as to how you can how you can prepare for an interview should you decide to apply. The first piece of advice is essentially to read something and then discuss it with a friend. Sounds very easy. The reason this is important is because you could be given an unseen text in your interview. It's particularly likely if you are doing a humanities subject, so you could be given a poem, a piece of source material, particularly for something like history, or you could be given an article. Additionally, you could be given a scientific article or some data that you need to kind of assess and analyse before the interview. In an interview, it might be that you have, say, 10 or 20 minutes to look at this, then you go in and you discuss that with your interviewer. A way to prepare for this is just print out articles you find on the news, take out a book of poetry from your library, and read a poem every day, then discuss it with a friend. The reason it's important is, 1, you're training yourself to deal with new information, and most interviews are trying to get you to deal with new information, so information that no one's seen before, so that no one has a particular advantage. But also it's good to discuss it because you get used to kind of thinking out loud, discussing your thoughts out loud, sharing your opinion with someone else, which isn't actually that common if you maybe go to a school where it's not seen quite favourably upon, I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you know, if it's not that cool to talk about your subject. And I'm so sorry if you go to that kind of school, because it's not fun when, you know, talking about poetry or talking about a subject you like is considered nerdy. But because that is the case, you probably aren't used to talking about a subject out loud. So I'd really recommend reading something to do with that subject, sharing your ideas about that subject with someone else and what you've read, getting them to share their opinion, and just kind of having a back and forth discussion with it. Following on from reading something new and having a chat about it with your friend or a teacher or whoever's around, I'd also really recommend playing devil's advocate. It's a bit of a weird phrase, I don't really like it, but it is a good way to get you thinking from different perspectives. You might read something and have one particular feeling about it, but think about how someone else might think about it, whether that's based on their upbringing, the country they live in, the historical period in which they live, their gender, their race, their ethnicity, or just using different pieces of evidence. Make sure you're always thinking about something from multiple perspectives, and that doesn't just have to be kind of on the social sciences or humanities side. It can be that are there different ways of approaching this problem, or how can this health issue be best addressed in a different context. Don't think it's, you know, oh, it's just, you know, airy-fairy humanities where like perspectives matter. Actually look at different pieces of evidence and consider different ways of approaching, say, a mathematical or scientific problem. The final practical tip I would give you is essentially just debate your personal statement. Really dissect it. The people who are interviewing you, they have read your personal statement, and although they do get many applications, they have read yours in quite a lot of detail. This applies to any work you've submitted, so whether you send an essay, a different piece of work, as well as your personal statement, do think about the way you were thinking when you wrote it, whether your perspective has changed since, whether someone else might think differently, whether there are any errors you made. It's not uncommon for someone to bring out your personal statement and say, this was really interesting to read, and you made this point, I want to, you know, argue the other way or bring up some new information. How do you respond in light of that? Really, the interview is about how you react to information you haven't engaged with before. It's not about facts, it's not about how much you already know. If you knew everything, you wouldn't need to go to uni, you wouldn't need to be taught. It's really not about knowing everything. It's about how you respond to information you haven't seen before, how you can kind of engage with that, whether you change your mind, whether you consider new pieces of information. It's basically about how you think. I know it sounds really easy, but it is not that simple, but that is kind of what's at the crux of it all. So have your personal statement, essentially pull it apart, you know, underline things, make comments everywhere, make sure you really know that and you're ready to argue for or against whatever point, because the person you're about to be interviewed by has definitely read that. So be prepared for that. Those were some really quick practical tips which I hope you find helpful. I really wish you the best of luck if you are about to go and be interviewed. One thing I say to everyone, it's not to be bleak, it's just to be realistic, is not everyone gets in. Actually, the majority of people who apply to Oxbridge get rejected, and that's okay. There are more people than places, and there are definitely more capable, talented, deserving people than there are places. So you being rejected doesn't mean you're not Oxbridge material, it doesn't mean you're not good enough, it just means that wasn't your year. So please don't be discouraged. That's not to end on a negative note, you know, go in, try your best. It's definitely okay to be nervous, but remember to think out loud, remember to share your ideas. It's okay to change perspectives, it's okay to disagree with yourself, it's definitely okay to disagree with the interviewer. It's not being rude. Sometimes they are just testing you, sometimes they think differently to you, and that's okay. That's what academic debate is all about. But yeah, best of luck. This is quite an early video in what I don't anticipate is going to be like a huge YouTube career. I just want to share information, advice and guidance for those who might need it, but if you do have any kind of questions, do put them in the comment box, wherever that is, and let me know if there's anything you would find particularly helpful for me to make a video on.